I want to talk about something that's super important, and that is the baseline for any motivational or goal setting or financial decisions in life, period, and that is self love. A lot of people, they won't do anything for themselves, but maybe they'll do it for their family or for someone around them. They're influenced by their friends or the needs of, a community or a social group. And in actuality, the thing that is the most beneficial and helpful to your life is self-love and being motivated to do something for yourself. And that can be harder. It can be a hard thing to nail down and to get to. So I want to talk about the 4 pillars of self-love. I think that's an important thing, and I'm going to talk about it in layman's terms instead of, the psychology side of things necessarily in the exact phrasing that it's in. You can Google that. Totally, go for it. Google the 4 pillars of self-love, read about it. I highly encourage it, but I'm gonna try to go ahead and state it in as plain of terms as possible, and hopefully in relatable terms. The 4 pillars of self-love are knowing yourself, accepting yourself, trusting yourself, and then advocating for yourself. Different people say different things. I've seen before it be called self-awareness, self-acceptance, self-conviction, and self-efficacy. I've seen it before be called acceptance, appreciation, nurturing, and transformation. But for me personally, I define it just a little bit differently so that it's more obvious. Or knowing yourself is being fully honest with yourself, knowing yourself in a real and realistic scientific way. So putting yourself in like a petri dish and without any emotions involved, observing yourself, saying, you know what, I tend to lie in this situation, or I tend to be weirdly good at this thing. Be honest about your limitations and about your talents, about where you do good things and about where you maybe are having some vices. Be really, really real with yourself, because in actuality, not everything about you is bad, and in actuality, not everything about you is good. And you can define good and bad however you choose to. Different people define those things in different ways. But the important thing is to find your own way of defining those things. And you might say, holy crap, I don't know myself. How would I even begin? The way I began was with my morals. I decided it was super important to me to have certain morals and values, and you can just Google a list of like values or morals, and then take that list, say it offers you a list of like 25 or 50 or whatever it is, and try to narrow it down to your top 3. So at first, maybe narrow it down to your top 10, and then narrow it down to your top 5, and then narrow it down to your top 3. And then if you can, try to pick the one that really seems like it is the base motivation for everything you do in a good way. There's also, unfortunately, negative values, and we have to be real with ourselves. And the same thing, we have to be real with, do I have these issues? And narrow it down. 10 things, 5 things, 3 issues that are major issues of mine, 1 thing that the majority of times is my negative motivator. When I do something bad or hurtful or bad is such a not nice word. Like whenever I do something that causes other people to maybe not have the best time, it's usually because of this. And you got to be real with yourself. I can fully admit that I am very motivated by a sense of feeling like I am bad, that I am worthless, that I have this insecurity. So when I say mess up, or I make a mistake, or feel like someone's not proud of me, maybe someone's disappointed in me, I really can tell this is something that is driving my negative reaction. If I am doing something well, I can recognize one of my major values, morals that I go and I pursue is consistency. I feel like being faithful and being, constant and being like a pillar of strength in that way is such an important thing that I will like do things without even really being conscious of them to continue to do that, to be that constant person for the people in my life. And I will drop things that are for me or that are for people that aren't the people in my life so that I can make sure I'm there for the people in my life. At times, unfortunately, to my detriment. But it's like, I have to be real with myself. I have to be honest with myself. Where do my morals lie? What is important to me? And then once I have that foundation, morally, this is where I stand. Take some very obvious things. Anger. What things make me angry? Okay. What things make me sad? What things make me really happy? What things make me anxious? Be really honest with yourself, okay? What things make me feel fulfilled? Maybe you don't know the answer to that one. You can work on that one later. The point is to make some sort of a foundation that you can start building up on for knowing yourself, okay? And for me, I had to start with my morals. And from there, I could start looking at my behaviors, because now, since I knew my morals, I knew what was motivating my behaviors. So then, once I started looking at my behaviors, then I started looking about my interests. And I just could keep compounding my knowledge of myself. Then you get to the next pillar of self-love. And allow me to be super clear. You can't skip. You have to do them in order. And you have to have all 4. You can't just have 3 of them and call it good. It don't work that way. So, yeah, this is a thing that I had to accept about the pillars of self-love, okay? So the next one is accepting yourself or appreciating yourself. The next one is basically forgiving yourself for the things that you feel like are failures and being able to give yourself credit for the things that you do well, which can be very difficult. It can be so hard not to beat yourself up when you mess up. It can be so hard to say, you know what, this is a learning situation and I'm gonna learn from this, and not feel so much like just guilt or shame. I struggle a lot with shame, personally. It can be really hard to be honest with yourself and say, you know what, I actually did a good job, and not like undercut that or undersell it, be a little dismissive of your good job, like, because you don't want to be arrogant or you don't want to ever be too proud, or, maybe someone that you knew growing up was really a jerk, or, there's people that you've met that were just jerks and you don't want to be anything like them and you're scared of going too far with it and ending up like them. You're not going too far with it if you're being honest. If in reality the thing you did was beneficial, objectively, to most people, or in most situations it would have been beneficial, scientifically, if you take all the emotions and personal scariness out of it, then you can give yourself some kudos and you can say, pat on the back, I did well. And you need to do that for little things, not just big things. It's not just, hey, I actually paid all my bills this month. That's a big thing. No, you also need to be like, hey, you know what? I woke up and I did not get good sleep last night and I was tired, but I still got up. Good job, me. I am proud of me for being resilient enough to get up. You gotta give yourself credit just as much as you've got to be real with yourself that, hey, I messed up right there. I need to change that about myself. Accepting yourself, you can't do that if you don't know yourself. If you have a behavior and you suddenly lash out at someone and you don't know what was motivating that, you can say, oh, I need to change that, but how are you going to change it? You're not going to be able to do crap. So you have to actually know yourself and then accept yourself. Third pillar is trusting yourself. Now, this one, you cannot do it if you don't already know yourself and your limitations and your talents, and you don't accept that what you're capable of and what your capacity is. If you don't accept your capacity, you're not going to be able to trust your capacity. Self-trust is an extremely difficult thing, especially if you don't have practice at it, because self-trust involves creating a habit of knowing, you know what, I can't make that promise. I can't say that. Yes, it would pacify the person right now, but when I don't follow through later, they're not going to be happy. And I know myself, I'm not going to actually do that. The odds of me doing that are not that high. I've got to trust that my limitations are here. It is really hard to not be able to meet the expectations or the hopes, or sometimes you love people so much you are willing to try to compromise yourself and change yourself into things that you are impossible to do. You try to shove yourself into molds you just can't fit in because you want so desperately to be what they want. And that is hard. It is so hard to trust yourself enough to say to them and to yourself, yeah, that's not my capability. It is also just as hard, if you don't have a habit of it, to trust yourself when you're doing it right, when you're doing it good, when you're doing the thing that is beneficial for you. It can be so hard to trust. Well, should I second guess this? Maybe I'm not right. Maybe it can get so hesitant, and you can cause yourself issues because you didn't just trust yourself and step forward and do it. So many people, they watch an educational video or they learn how to do something like by just looking or hearing, but they don't actually take the steps to do it. And the act of doing it, the reason they can't go further and do it, maybe you just, before this video, you watched a financial video or a motivational video, and you were like, wow, that's good advice, but you didn't immediately go start doing something about it. The reason you didn't is because you don't trust yourself. And you can't trust yourself until you accept yourself, and you can't accept yourself until you know yourself. The last pillar of self-love, of healthy love for yourself, not arrogance, not narcissism, not jumping way too far and taking it to an extreme, but actual caring about yourself and treating yourself well, is self-advocacy, is basically putting boundaries up. Healthy, actual boundaries. Boundaries that you'll actually enforce. If a person crosses them, there's repercussions. And you're not a bad person for doing that because they hurt you and you are valuable enough that you don't deserve to be hurt. That's hard. Self-advocacy means saying no. Yeah. Self-advocacy also means saying yes. Yeah. Self-advocacy means you know yourself, you accept what you need and want, you trust that your needs and wants actually are important, and now you're going to actually insist that your needs and wants be met. Self-advocacy means you change. Self-advocacy means I can't tolerate that habit anymore, I have to make a new one. Self-advocacy means my brain is a parking garage and only so many cars can fit in it, and I need to get rid of some of these old junkers and park some newer, shinier cars in there. Self-advocacy is transformative, and it is personal growth. It is where things start actually changing in your life. And you have to do all of these pillars in order, and you have to have all 4 of them. But if you can start having self-love in your life, even if you can't do it all of the time. So if you don't have any experience with self-love, if you haven't had a life of that, if you grew up with abuse and trauma and you have PTSD, if you grew up with people who just didn't teach you things, or maybe flat out tried to keep you from learning things and stay willfully ignorant, like, it can be super hard. It can also be very difficult to accept that loving yourself does not mean that you are doing bad things. Telling people no, or not always giving them what they want because what you want and what you need matters just as equally, it can feel very rude. Or am I being aggressive? Am I being too much? And you start to second guess yourself and start to fall back into not trusting yourself, and then you got to start back up again. You got to build yourself back up again. It's not like an instantaneous thing, but self-love is an intensely important thing. There are studies and there are doctors and scientists and education. So much of it all bends towards self-love is the first actuation of change in society, change in, like, the functionality of systems inside of countries, the change in education, like change in being able to overcome trauma and resiliency. Like, self-love is the starting point. Self-love is the strongest defense against trauma. Self-love helps, like, systematic abuse and generational abuse not to continue. So self-love is an extremely powerfully important thing, and self-love can create a momentum for you in your life toward things that you maybe have only dared dream about or imagine, but don't really know if that's obtainable. And in actuality, you are filled with potential. And there's a saying in the Stoics of, whatever you can be, you must be. Whatever you can be, whatever potential is in you, whatever capacity is in you, there is a part of you that feels like you must pursue it. There's a part of you that feels crappy about yourself when you're not pursuing it. And you get so down on yourself. When you are in pursuit of it, you might be making mistakes and you might not do it perfectly. You might need a lot of work and effort and years and education to get to it. But the act of pursuing it is motivating. It is helpful, and it is giving some sense of fulfillment. When you are able to actually be able to be self-efficient, it's life-changing. So self-love is so important. You might not be anywhere near the fourth pillar. You might still be at that first pillar, which means you might not even have the knowledge that you matter. And I say it a lot in multiple of my videos, and I will continue to. You matter. If you are alive, if you exist, you have potential brimming up to your ears. And it might not feel like it, but that does not mean it's not true. Feelings do not change facts. And the fact is if you're alive, you have the potential to do something good. It's just statistically true. You're not an anomaly. You're not problematic. You're not the common denominator in everything that's ever gone wrong in your life. Because you're also the common denominator in everything that's ever gone right. And the potential for more things to go right is there, and it's in you, and it wouldn't be there if there wasn't a you. All the potential in you would not exist if you didn't exist. You matter. Whether you're conscientious of it or not, whether you're able to accept that or not, it doesn't change that you matter.